It has been 54 days since we first heard those allegations of sexual assault and harassment by Harvey Weinstein. Almost as shocking as the hundreds of women who have come forward to say they too were harassed by powerful men in the entertainment industries, the number of men who seemingly didn't believe or know or understand their behavior was wrong. Weinstein's representatives have denied accusations. When women said the comedian Louis C.K. touched them himself in front of them, C.K. apologized, but added, quote, "At the time, I said to myself that what I did was okay." When Kevin Spacey was accused of trying to seduce a 14-year-old boy, in his statement, he said, "I honestly do not remember the encounter. It would have been over 30 years ago." The victims in these cases say they felt lasting effects, have been traumatized for years. So why is it the accused don't recognize the impact of their actions? I want to speak with Dr. Judy Ho. She's a friend of the show. She is joining me via Skype, and she's a clinical psychologist and a professor, of course, at Pepperdine University. And I needed you to talk to me about this because I don't really understand how it is that a 70-year-old man, journalist, that's accused of being inappropriate, believed that all of those women were just into him, that opening up his bathrobe and answering the door was a perfectly acceptable. Come on. What am I missing here, Judy?
Oh my gosh, Michaela, you have broke it down so well. Unfortunately, we are talking about this topic because it's become so prolific in the last couple of months. And you're right. Humans love to construct their own reality. I mean, really, there isn't an objective reality because our version of the truth is always slightly different than some other person's version. And this is a part of human nature to justify bad behavior. Most criminals that I've worked with, spoken to, they have reasons for why they committed those crimes. And in their mind, they were justified. And I believe that in many of these cases, the accused are saying, well, in my mind, I made it okay because I thought it was consensual. Or they decide to have selective amnesia. Well, I don't remember what happened, and somehow that makes it okay. But most people don't see themselves as a bad person. And in order to make themselves be okay with doing unsavory things, they will convince themselves that there was some kind of logic to it. And that's really sad because, as you pointed out, the women...
Is that what it comes down to, is that they essentially convince themselves of it? Because I really believe that we are wired to know what's right and wrong. And so I think that's what, maybe I'm trying to rationalize with irrational behavior, but I can't wrap my head around the fact there weren't red flags going off at the time, or afterwards, mea culpa, what I did was terrible.
That's right.
Not I don't remember, or I thought it was consensual.
You're absolutely right. And I think it's precisely that makes people want to justify their bad behavior. And I'm only talking about the majority of people who do have that good moral compass, Michaela, and know what's right and wrong. And therefore, they have to justify to themselves when they do something bad. But unfortunately, there's also a small proportion of people who truly do get off on the power and the way that they feel when they dominate others. I mean, this is a totally other segment of the population. We're talking about people who we sometimes talk about as psychopaths or sociopaths or people with antisocial disorder, and they know that what they're doing is wrong and they love it. They kind of really sadly kind of love it. And that's what I'm really concerned about, that particular segment of the population who even today, they know what they did is wrong and they're only apologizing to preserve maybe their careers, their public persona, but truly inside they're not sorry.
Well, with some of these cases, especially when you think about the fact there's hundreds, in the case of that movie director, Toback, he has hundreds of women who accuse him of the awful, disgusting things that he did, pleasuring himself in front of them. I almost wonder if this behavior was so a part of them, almost like breathing, that it wouldn't stand out to them that they were doing anything wrong because it was so part of their everyday behavior and demeanor.
Absolutely. You know what happens to the human brain when we do something over and over is that we continue to up that ante because over time, your brain develops sort of a acclimation to something that used to be stimulating before. And so what's concerning here is that not only did these individuals not necessarily see it as different from what they do every day because it's so repetitive, but there's also that danger of every time having to up the ante, even impinge on these women so much more so that they can still get that pleasure and that feeling from it. And that's what I think is so concerning, is that these individuals who make it a pattern eventually that's not going to feed them enough and they're going to want more.
I'm curious, maybe in your field you've noticed, or there, I don't know if there is a connection. Often it's said that abusers, physical abusers, were abused themselves as children. Is there a similar instance here? Have you seen that to be true?
Yes, you're absolutely right. So unfortunately, we see this intergenerational cycle of abuse, that if you are somebody who has been abused as a child, you're much more likely to become an aggressor and an abuser as an adult. And this especially holds true for sexual abuse. So if they were somehow abused sexually as children, they're also more likely to be a sexual perpetrator as an adult. And so at some point, we have to try to break the cycle. And a lot of the times, these individuals do not feel like it's okay for them to speak about it or to even get professional help. But it's only through something that the person really feels like they've decided to make a change and they're going to bring themselves to a professional to work through this, that they can really make different choices as adults. And so what you were talking about just now, the correlation is about 30 to 50% in studies. And so this is something that we really need to deal with.
Absolutely. Well, we know accountability is now part of the equation, and there will be justice for these victims. And that is going to be part of stopping this and stemming this behavior.